Hello, I'm Adi Dalmida, the author of Dying to Shine. And this show has been brought about because I want you to know that no matter what you're going through in life, you can shine and you can triumph over adversity. You can be victorious. And I have some amazing women that I'm interviewing who have stories that will truly inspire, educate, and motivate you to know that if they can do it, so can you. And tonight I have Belinda Otas. Belinda, welcome to Dying to Shine Stories. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Belinda Otas. I'm an editor. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer. I'm also a media consultant, and I often say about myself that I'm a theater fanatic. You buy the ticket, I'm happy to sleep there all week.
That's true. I know of some. Tell me a few of the theater shows that are favorites to you.
Oh my goodness. Lee Nottage is one of my absolute favorite playwrights. She's the writer of Sweat. She also wrote Ruined, which chronicles the experiences of Congolese women during the ongoing Congo War and the level of gender violence that women have to endure. I think that's one of my favorite plays to date. But recently, I saw a play called For Black Boys, and it chronicles the experiences of Black British boys to Black British men. And it takes you from their pain to their triumph, to their vulnerability, to their desires, to their fears and their concerns, and also the fact that they live in a society that from birth to when they die practically stereotypes and boxes them. It's a play I would recommend to every Black man to see.
Okay. So, Belinda, it looks as if you have a full portfolio. So, for the audience that are watching us and listening to us, how would you describe yourself in 3 words? And why would you choose those 3 words?
Oh my goodness. That's a tricky one, but I'm going to try. I'm going to go for miracle, resilient, and grateful. Those are the 3 words I will use to describe myself. A miracle because this year makes it 27 years since I have been on a health journey. I was misdiagnosed at the age of 16 and ended up living on dialysis. I've had 2 kidney transplants. I've lived on dialysis for a combined 11 years. My first transplant gave me 15 good, fantastic years, the miracle of medicine. Unfortunately, my second transplant was a totally different experience to my first transplant and did not go according to plan. So I found myself back on dialysis again in 2008. So this year makes it 5 years since I've been back on dialysis. And so when I look on my journey overall, 11 years of dialysis, 15 years of a transplant, and 27 years of being on medication, which is not easy because they come with their own effects, which then affect me in different ways. I also happen to suffer from chronic pain. Living with kidney disease means you are at high risk of bone disease. So that's an area where I struggle. I struggle with chronic pain. I always have joint pain, my muscles, everything. And so just my daily reality since the age of 16 has been shaped by a chronic medical condition that I don't want to say I have no control over, but to a certain degree, I have no control over because your situation can change from one minute to the other. And so for me, and especially as a woman of faith, my life has been by grace. And I absolutely have the highest level of respect for medicine, for doctors, for nurses, and the great work that they do. And so both factors have contributed greatly to me being alive. But ultimately, I give all of the thanks, all of the honor to God, because He's the reason that I am a walking miracle, because it's in Him that I live, move, and have all of my being. And so that's why I use the word miracle to describe myself. I use resilient because to live the life that I have lived since I was 16 years old, when your waking moment, your sleeping moment is defined by a medical condition, and you have to plan your whole life around it, your school life, your work life, your social life, and everything that you do, and to be so heavily dependent on medication. There are days when getting out of bed is very tricky. There are days when I cannot move. I've had, in fact, this year has been very, very challenging mentally and physically, because I've had days when getting out of bed was a real struggle. I also happen to suffer from episodes of depression for which I'm on medication. And so I use resilience because one thing about me is that I'm stubborn and I'm going to keep fighting. And I have this saying that, giving up is not in my DNA. That's my personal mantra for myself. And so being resilient, being stubborn allows me to keep fighting, because in spite of all the health challenges, I still have a lot of dreams. I still dream big, and I still have a lot of hope. I remain optimistic at all times. And so I will use resilient as my second word. And then grateful, because a grateful heart allows you to stay light. Because when you try to carry the burden all by yourself, that weighs you down, that's heavy. But they say when you can think, you can thank, and thank rather. And so for me, being able to stay grateful and in a posture and position of gratitude allows me to have an optimistic outlook on what's possible, on what life can give me or what I can get out of life. It helps me to remember where I'm coming from and where I'm going. Let me give you an example. Recently, I found out that someone at my dialysis unit had passed. Prior to that, I saw her 2 weeks, just 2 weeks ago, or rather now 3 weeks ago. And last week, I found out that she had passed. And so it makes you think about yourself, because that could easily be you. And so you have to stay grateful. You have to take the moment as they come, and you just have to navigate each day, as it unfolds. So that's why I'll pick gratitude.
Oh, as you were talking, definitely you exemplify a person that is living a miraculous life, and resilience 100%. Would you say that those characteristics are part of the reason why you have a campaign that you want dialysis to be known more universally in terms of kidney donations, etc.? What would you say about
Um, that's a good question. I think probably because you know me so well, you've had a front row seat of my journey for more
yes?
than 20 years now. And so I think for me, talking about organ donation is simply because after my first transplant, I went ahead to live my life. I was able, I think one of the biggest things I gained from having a transplant was being able to go to university. It was challenging, but imagine trying to go to university while on dialysis. I didn't have to worry about that. And so that's why I'm very grateful for my donor and my donor family, and their decision to be organ donors. But it didn't really hit me how critical a situation we had in the Black British community about the low level of organ donation from our community for our own people. It was when I went back on dialysis the second time in 2018, walking back into a dialysis unit after a 15 years break was
Must have been hard.
it was hard. It was very hard, because one of the things that happened to me after my first transplant was whenever I heard the noise of a dialysis machine when I went to the hospital for my checkup, I would often run away. The noise just triggered something in me I couldn't deal. But this time around, when I found myself there, I couldn't run away because I needed dialysis. I need dialysis to stay alive. It keeps me alive. I resent living on dialysis, but because it keeps me alive, I have to show up for the process. I have to respect the process and show up. Otherwise, I'm going to be dead. And you have to walk in wisdom. You cannot um, be a person of faith and then do something stupid. That is a no-no for me. And so now I have to sit there for 4 hours and have my treatment, and it keeps me alive. And I'm very grateful for access to treatment. But the second thing I noticed was the number of people who looked like me that were in dialysis unit. And this time around, more younger people. I mean, you have children on dialysis. There are dialysis units that's cater to children. But for someone who at the time I was still in my late 30s, I started dialysis when I was a teenager. I had my first transplant when I was 22, and not to go back on dialysis when I think about 37. That's a hard place, because for me this was like the prime. I'm entering the prime of my life, where I want to plan for my future. There are things I want to achieve. There's no more time to play about or waste, and dialysis is now left, right, and center in my life, and it's very challenging to navigate that. But to see so many other people in the same situation from my community was very heartbreaking for me. And so I thought to myself, especially as a journalist, I cannot be a journalist and keep quiet. I cannot be a storyteller and keep quiet. My passion is for telling African stories. And in the UK context, in London where I live, where I'm often classified as a Black British woman, I cannot just keep quiet as a Black British woman and not contribute to the Black British story on this health front. As someone from the African British community, as well as the bigger group of the African British community and the African Caribbean British community that then makes up the Black British community. And so that's why I wanted to add my voice to the conversation about organ donation. It is an uncomfortable conversation, but it is one that we must have in our community, because it is the best way to show up for each other with an understanding of our shared humanity. So that's why I speak on that on that issue.
And I can see you're using the miraculous life that you have and the resilience and your stubbornness to pursue that message. And I'm sure that there are many, many people, even some that are watching and listening today, who will be saying, they're grateful for you for highlighting this very, very important message.
I mean, thank you for that. That's very kind. For me, it's an honor to actually speak on this, because there's so many of us affected by this. And in this past year, recently, another conversation that I want to add my voice to is the fact that we shouldn't wait until we need dialysis to talk about organ donation. We also need to start talking about our kidney health, because when we know better, we do better. There's a high proclivity in our community towards kidney disease. So, for example, let me share a statistic with you, or rather, some research that I came across earlier this year, which says that people from Black or South Asian backgrounds are more likely to develop kidney disease. And so it is the case that when you look across dialysis units, or even across the ocean in the United States, there is a high prevalence of kidney disease amongst African Americans. Now, I cannot speak to one particular reason why this is the case, but I know that in our community, diabetes, high blood pressure, those are health issues that are quite prevalent, and these two factors contribute greatly to kidney failure, as well as it being something that is hereditary or genetic in the family. And so with this information, while I do not consider myself to be a kidney expert or renal expert, I'm simply an expert based on my lived experience. And so it is my wish and my hope that we would actually give ourselves a better chance to stay off dialysis by looking after our kidney health long before we are told that we are not dealing with kidney failure. And so that means what we eat, what we drink, how we cook our food. I know we like grilled and fried, but as someone who currently lives on dialysis, a lot of my food is boiled, and it's very boring, but it keeps me alive because I have to watch my potassium, my phosphate, my sodium levels, my, and all of those things that 20 years ago, if you asked me what potassium was, I'll be looking at you like, what's that? But now I have to, I have to boil my yam, I have to boil my plantain, because boiling them means I can then get rid of the water I used to boil it, because that then reduces the potassium level. I have to watch in terms of my fruit consumption. The only thing I can really have is apple, and maybe every now and again, if I want to treat myself, a little orange juice, because fruits are high in phosphate and things like that. So I avoid things like nuts and peanuts. Anything in the nuts family, I have to watch what I'm having and when I'm having it. So my diet can feel restricted. I just have to find interesting ways to eat my food and still make it exciting. But those are things you have to deny yourself to have. So in order not to get to that stage where you deny yourself, eat in a more healthy way. Avoid things that are stressful. Make sure you don't end up with diabetes, because you're one step away from kidney failure by the time you end up with diabetes, especially the really horrible kind.
Wow, that is definitely food for thought, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers will really be taking some of those points.
Yeah, because you're better off the dialysis machine than, because the key thing is, I think, when I was thinking about it earlier this year, I said a lot of the time we are in a reactive position rather than a responsive position. And I think we are better off, because when you are responding to something, you still have some element of control. But when you are reacting, at this point, it's like you're grappling for survival. So I think we'll be much better off if we are responding to this health issue than reacting in the aftermath of something major happening.
100%. Now, against that backdrop, it's been quite a journey from 16 to now.
Yes, 16. I'll be 44 this year. Oh
Wow.
my God.
You don't look it at all.
Thank you.
So, what I would like to ask you is, against that backdrop, what does dying to shine mean to you?
Oh my goodness. Dying to shine. I think it's an interesting question, because so for some people it might be like, what do you mean dying to shine? But for me, I think because of my experience, and also deciding to become a journalist, which is not necessarily the quickest path to riches. I think for me, it's about trusting your process. Dying to shine for me is trusting your process, because especially in today's world, we live in a digital age. We're living in the digital age and space 24/7, where we see everyone else's excellence on social media, and everyone else is celebrating, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And sometimes in the career context, you might feel like, why everyone else has got something to celebrate and I've got nothing, I'm not doing anything, and you might feel like you're running behind. Funny, I use the word running behind, because for a very long time, and sometimes I still feel like I'm playing catch up, because when I look back on my journey, I finished secondary school in Nigeria at the age of 16. So by 17 I would have been at university. Now, everyone I went to university with probably finished by the time they were maybe 20, 21, graduated from university. I went to university at the age of 25. And it just felt like I was playing catch up. And I remember there were times when it felt like I was driving myself crazy, trying to make sure I get a first class, trying to make sure I get this and I get that. And at some point I had to say, girl, breathe, because you survived, first of all. So you're not in competition with anybody. Your only competition is yourself. And so dying to shine is recognizing in all aspects and facets of life, learning to trust your journey, not being in a hurry to be announced to the world, because that's dangerous. Dying to shine is willing to go through the process to you know, I mean, if you want to do something, you have to learn how to do it. And so it's about maturing through your process. It's about recognizing I'm not very good at this thing, or I'm not good in this area, or this thing about my in terms of my personality, or how I relate to people is not the best way, it's not the most ideal way. And so I need to work on this. I need to be more aware of this, developing self-awareness, developing emotional intelligence. Just using myself as an example, in terms of one area where I have often struggled in the past, and sometimes still struggle, is in the area of relationships. I'm one of those people. You do you, I do me. See you later. Sometimes, I can be that way. But I'm learning that as you grow older, that's not always the way to resolve things. And so it's about finding that emotional balance in yourself, and that comes from a place of inner confidence, having a sense of worth, being able to stand in your truth, speak your truth in love, and to some degree with patience, but also knowing when to say this cannot go on anymore, rather than just shut the door at the other party and say, see you, bye, I'm never speaking to you again. It's two different things. And especially, I think it became very apparent when I was a freelance journalist, because as a freelancer, you have to swallow a lot for the sake of peace, because you want to work. And so it's about learning how to negotiate and navigate and still keeping your sense of self. But without going to the extreme where it becomes destructive and detrimental to your own well-being. And so dying to shine is a whole lot of things. It's personal, it's professional, it's spiritual in my opinion as well. It's cultural and social as well. But bottom line is, it's a willingness to trust your process, and a willingness to know when to keep quiet, a willingness to know when to speak, a willingness to listen to reason, and also a willingness to submit to wisdom and discernment, to prepare yourself in order to be ready for an arena that you're not yet equipped for. And it's basically about learning skills.
Let's stop. We're going to have to piece the interview together. We'll have to stop and piece it together. Don't worry.
Okay, I can say that again. I can start again. Yeah. So for me, dying to shine is really a willingness to trust your process, a willingness to learn, so that you can learn the skills that you need for an arena that you are not yet equipped for. And it applies to every area of life: relationships, professional life, personal life, family life, social life, your cultural life, in every way.
Can we dig a little bit deeper here?
Okay.
Can you give me a specific example of where you have died to shine and how it's helped to shape your worldview?
So right now, I have been I've been on my dying to shine journey for some time now, for some years. For me, I think it's a continuous progress, because I think about the fact that my journey in life has not gone according to everyone else's. I think everybody has their unique journey. I have often found myself doing in real time what other people may have already done. So, for example, going to uni almost 10 years after I was supposed to. You have to learn to be patient. And in that period, had to find other ways to occupy my time, and not just have dialysis defining every aspect of my life. Becoming a journalist and going down the route of a freelance journalist, which is a very competitive space. And in particular, because I had decided that I wanted to tell African stories, and I'm not based on the continent, I'm based in the diaspora. That in itself is a challenge, because I can argue that sometimes you always have the best view when you're on the ground, that you have access is a little bit more practical with people, whereas I'm here trying to interview someone on the continent. It takes a whole lot of planning and a whole lot of walking around each other. And so sometimes in my career, I have sometimes felt like I was playing catch up, or I was on this race that just felt like it was taking such a long, long time. But when I look back now, my journalism career, I'm very grateful for how far I have come. I'm grateful for the things I've achieved. I'm grateful for some of the people I've been blessed and fortunate to interview. I mean, if someone had told me maybe a decade ago that I would have ever interviewed Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie or Angelique Kidjo or Tony Lumelu or the ex-president of Malawi. Oh my gosh, why is her name escaping me? President Banda, I would have, it would have been like, oh no, But I've been blessed to interview so many people, both famous and not famous. I've been blessed to interview women activists in the gender space who are fighting for the equality and equity of women on the continent and in the global diaspora. I've been blessed to interview African women entrepreneurs who are calling who are really, really doing great things. They are not just breaking glass ceilings, they are shattering glass ceilings. And so to be in that space has been a really wonderful thing for me. And most recently, as the ex business and innovation editor at Amaka, being able to commission stories about African women and really contribute to that narrative of being able to say African women are so much more than a woman with sagging breast and a baby and flies hovering all over them. They are living their best lives and they are showing up in their true authentic selves. And so that has been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me, but it didn't happen overnight. I've had to learn to be patient. I've had to learn moments to keep quiet, even though I had a lot to say. I've had to learn how to navigate work relationships, especially when you're freelance and finances are not always free flowing because you're dependent on people paying you and paying you on time. I've had episodes where I would do work sometimes and 3, 4, 5, 6 months, I was still waiting to be paid. I've had to work with people who, because they were in a position of power, could afford to do things that ordinarily I would have said, hey, don't do that. That's not acceptable. But you learn to keep quiet because you're looking at the bigger picture and ahead for where you want to get to. It has also been an opportunity to learn about toxic relationships and gaslighting and learning to reposition those kinds of relationships without necessarily just slamming the door in people's faces, if I can put it like that. So I think for me, Dying to Shine has been most apparent in my career because there's people see the articles, but they don't see the nights that yeah, they don't see the backstory, or what's going on in the background. They don't see when I've cried. They don't see when I'm fretting about how am I going to pay my bills because I haven't been paid. They don't see when someone in a position of power has used their power to show me that I'm in charge and this is how it's going to happen, or this is what I can do to you. And so those moments can be quite painful. And I'm not necessarily celebrating that because that will not work for anybody, but it's something I've always had to approach from a perspective of faith, pray about it, speak to my mentors. Like I have a mentor for a whole lot of things. Ade Darmida, you are one of my mentors, and I'm very grateful to you. I've also had a journalism mentor that I can reach out to and say, this is my situation, what do I do? And so so going back and building those relationships, learning to build relationships, has been a key factor in my process of Dying to Shine. And recently, in the past 2 years, where I've had the hunger to go back to my creative writing self, because when I went off to uni, I studied creative writing and journalism, but journalism is what has been at the forefront of everything that I've done so far. And so going back and taking courses again in creative writing, I do that on Wednesdays. I've taken a break for the last month now because I want to do some writing. I want to put my head down and really do some writing, and I've been doing that, and I'm very proud of it. But the writing I've been doing is not necessarily something that I'm sharing or putting out there, and I'm doing it that way specifically because in my quiet time when I've prayed about it, what I keep hearing is you are being hidden. And I think the best way to explain that is from a wisdom perspective, because we live in a social media world where we're quick to say everything we're doing and share everything we're doing. I am learning to keep quiet and do the work. And so that too is
Let the
part of
work
dying to
speak.
shine. Yes, and that too is part of dying to shine. And speaking as a woman of faith, I one of the things I have heard clearly whenever I've been upset that I haven't moved as further as I would have liked, and I haven't done everything as I would have liked. One thing I keep hearing is God is hiding you. It's so clear whenever I hear it or remember it, like the first time I heard it. So I have to keep telling myself that maybe I need to, not even maybe, I need to be more patient, and I need to trust my process. And like recently, another thing that my spirit keeps reminding me about is you are not late. And that's because I heard it as a quote from someone else. And so all of those things combined, I think it's mostly my career that I've had to die to shine. And in dying to shine, I'm learning relationship skills, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, because sometimes, when it's you're not the most aware of what you're doing until someone else points it out. And it's being willing to learn from other people. For example, I have a journalism, she's a friend and a colleague, and there are areas where she knows so much more in terms of digital, online presence, content creation. She's so far ahead of me. And recently, not even recently, but one thing I've always done is take a step back and ask her questions because, I want to learn from her. And it's no longer about age or about how long I've been a journalist or she's been a journalist. There's something she's really good at that I need to learn from. Sometimes dying to shine is keeping quiet and just learning from the other person. Sometimes dying to shine is being willing to be the last person to speak, because in my previous life, I was
There's
always
power in that as well.
I,
Yeah.
I was always ready to be the first to speak, or just really go off a tangent, and it's sometimes I look back, like there are relationships that I no longer have that I wish I still had, but I know that there's no going back, so I take the lessons from them. Or maybe there's been a way I've approached other people that I shouldn't have. And sometimes you just realize that it was probably your own insecurity playing up. And so dying to shine is addressing your own insecurity as well. So dying to shine is a lot of things. But the bottom line for me is all of these lessons, all of these experiences are preparation for the next stage.
Yes. And out of all that you have shared, what would you say are the two key lessons that life has taught you so far?
Ooh. For me right now, trusting my process is a key lesson. Learning not to compare myself to people. So you see, I grew up in Nigeria until I was 16, and I went to a boarding school where we were less than, I think, 500 in that school. I don't think we were even up to 300. And so in a class, you have 20 people. And I could not afford to go home as on my report card as number 20, because my father would kill me. And so that what that meant was I developed a very competitive approach to education, to achievement, to doing anything. And I have found that very detrimental because it has taken me years to come out of competition and move into collaboration. And so that whole process is, I'm still learning to trust myself and learning that I am my own competition, not other people, not anyone else. Even now, I have to remind myself, especially when I log on to LinkedIn and see everybody, oh, I've done this today, I've done that. And it's like, nope, it's their time, celebrate them. And so one thing I do now is whenever I see someone sharing something, if it's someone I know, I either like it or I put congratulations, well done. Learning to celebrate people is part of dying to shine, because it doesn't always have to be about you. And it's not like they're in competition with you. They are on their own journey, and you don't know what it is taking for them to get there. If it's something that you would like to do, ask questions or go online and learn. And so for me, it's about trusting my process. It's about moving from a competitive mindset to a collaborative mindset and being willing to learn in that process. Obviously, everybody might not want to collaborate with you, and that's okay. Just find the people who will, or the person who will, or if all else fails, go online. It's also trusting that all doors are not for me. So when people say no, as much as, especially as a freelance journalist, as much as no is very, very painful, sometimes it is for your own benefit. Sometimes no is for your own protection. And so all of those things are like the significant element of the lessons that are really key on this journey for me. The other thing I would say is, in learning to trust your process, the quote I heard the other day, which says, you are not late. And I think because I'm getting older in terms of age number, I feel like there are things that I should have done by now. I mean, there was a period when I wanted to be married and have children, and now I'm actually grateful that I'm not married, because with dialysis and everything, my dream has become the baby calling out to me, asking for manifestation, and I want to focus on that. So I'm grateful that I'm not married. I'm actually relieved that I'm not married, because I don't know if I would have the energy to do dialysis, try to be there for someone else and take care of a husband, or if I had kids, and then try to do my dreams as well. It's like, how is that gonna work out? And so it's about trusting your process, and also learning that I'm not late. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and until I learn the lessons I'm supposed to learn here, I don't think God is ready to move me to the next level. So
That's right. And delay is not denial.
yeah, exactly.
What would you tell the audience and those listening are ways in which you handle life challenges?
Whew. Oh boy. So being stubborn, I know being stubborn doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me, simply because one thing I've always said to myself, even when I get a rejection letter or people say no to a pitch, that is always, giving up is not in my DNA. Now, I don't want to fantasize this element of being a strong woman, because I think sometimes that works against us. I'm human, so I have my good days, I have bad days, I have really, really bad days. I don't think I've ever publicly said before that I'm on medication for depression. This is the first time I've said that anywhere publicly. I have days when I cannot get out of bed. And finding myself back on dialysis these past 5 years has been really tough, really, really tough. Especially the fact that I lost my mom just 2 years before I found myself back on, 2, 3 years before I found myself back on dialysis. When I was previously on dialysis, my mom was alive and she did everything: hospital, cooking, cleaning. I didn't have to worry much. But being back on dialysis now and not having had there, like the gap, I cannot even begin to tell you how massive that gap is. But I've been blessed with siblings who, though distance is a big factor, they take it in turn every summer to come spend time with me, you know. And recently my baby sister came over to do her masters. So for the first time since 2015, I have an immediate family member in the UK. Fair enough, she's not living at home with me. She's up north studying, but it helps to know that at least I have
Mm.
my immediate family member in the same country with me. Having said that, I have a small group of friends who have become family. For example, my next of kin, God bless her soul, is someone I met at church, and
Mm.
she has practically stepped in. She helps me with a whole lot. I have other friends who also step in to help me. So I have that small support network, but the truth remains that I'm the one dealing with the health issue. And living on dialysis can be a lonely experience, not because you don't have friends or you don't have family or people that care about you, but simply because you're the one who has to sit on that machine for 4 hours each
Wow.
time you are on dialysis. And so for me, I think my strength, obviously my strength without a shadow of that, comes from God. I give him all the glory. But also having a personality with a stubborn streak, that has been very helpful to me in this aspect, because it means I always say to myself, when push comes to shove, I have to dig deep. And by the grace of God, find that strength to keep going. So being stubborn is very helpful to me. Refusing to give up. Being optimistic is also very helpful. Having dreams, having goals, having a vision and a purpose to work towards, that's also something that I find very helpful. Sometimes it might feel like wishful thinking, but in that moment, it helps me to have something to look forward to. Because I remember after my second transplant, which didn't go according to plan, um, the doctors were going to do something called a retransplantation. And I was fully aware that if it didn't work, they would then move on to the nephrectomy, which is a removal of the kidney. A retransplantation is when they try to work on the kidney, bring it out, work on it, give it back, put it back, and see what happens. But in my case, that was not how it happened. It actually ended up being that the kidneys I was born with, because the kidneys I was born with, they actually shrunk when I had my kidney failure at the age of 16. And so they've always been inside me. They were never taken out. But during my second transplant not working or going according to plan, when they send you for MRI, CT
Mm.
scan, ultrasound, they discovered that
Package.
I had a growth on my left kidney. And so when after my retransplantation and nephrectomy, which was a like practically double surgery on the same day, by the time I came to, they let me know that, oh, we found a growth on your kidney, so we're going to send you to urology. I go to urology. It turns out cancer was growing on the kidney, and so you're like, oh. So immediately, because my mom passed away from cancer, I have seen what it can do to even the strongest person. It practically eats you up alive. And just having that experience and knowledge, I instantly knew that I wanted it taken out. You didn't have to ask me twice.
Mm.
And when they took out what this growth, supposed growth was, because at the time they didn't know what it was, but by the time they took it out, it was renal carcinoma, which is one of the most common forms of kidney cancer. That was the first one. The second one, I went for a follow-up gynecology appointment, went for an MRI, and there's another growth on my right kidney. You didn't have to tell me a second time. Again, I told them, let's take it out.
Mm.
It also turns out this was also another form of cancer that was on it. Now, in both cases, they were at the what I would call the very early stage, so that meant that any chances of reoccurrence were well below 10%, which works in my favor, because most cancers, as we know,
Mm.
the damage is already far gone before some people are diagnosed. So when I put all of these together and think about the things I have survived and the things I have had to survive, well, it creates a bigger picture that leaves me optimistic
Mm.
and hopeful. Now, that's not to say it is easy, because I think I said earlier about the fact that I actually resent living on dialysis, because for me dialysis is a thief of time. Nevertheless, I have to respect the process and show up, because if I don't show up, I'm going to be sick, because I have so much toxin and waste that have not been filtered out of my body. And so it's about perspective as well. Perspective helps you to stay on track, stay grateful, and not miss a beat. But sometimes I do miss the beat. I just reposition myself and find the way forward.
You know, as you're going through the different ways in which you overcome these challenges, what I can say is truly you are miraculous, you are resilient, and I'm grateful that you are grateful for the life that you are living and yet to live. With that in mind, Belinda, I would like for you to advise someone who's watching or listening and saying, wow, I'm in this situation. What advice would you give to them who perhaps they're having transfusion, or they're on dialysis, or they're waiting for a transplant? What advice would you give to them so that they can still stay focused on a career or just enjoying life? What advice would you give?
Whew, so, maybe you can tell I like colors. so, so I think it's finding joy in the small things that bring you laughter and joy, or just joy in the small things of life. Because there's that saying that it's the little things that matter. So for me, I love contemporary art. I go to art galleries. Um, I love the theater. I take myself out to the theater. I'm not much of a film buff, but if there's a film I must see, then I take myself to go and see it. So after my second transplant, when things went south, I think in 2019, I practically saw a play every week. And that was very intentional because it was a form of escapism for me to be able to sit and have a front row seat into the life of a character and not have to focus on myself. And so I would say find the little things that bring you joy and do them. And again, I love colors. I love wearing colors. So whenever I have an opportunity to go out, I make sure I look colorful, because for me it matters how I present, but it's also about how I feel. So it's just those little things on the personal side. Like, do the little things that bring you joy. I also enjoy reading. Like, one of the things I was saying to one of my friends last year was, I find my reading level has dropped because I'm so tired. I pick up a book and the next thing I'm falling asleep all the time, because I'm just so tired all the time and I want to do better with my reading. So now I listen to audiobooks. I sometimes I'll have my earphones on during dialysis and just be listening even while writing to an audiobook. So reading also helps because it allows you to escape and travel through live vicariously through the lives of the people you're reading about or what you're reading about. I enjoyed watching documentaries as well. So those are like the little things I do on the personal side. In terms of the professional side, or in terms of fulfillment in career, what I would say is to keep dreaming, to never give up. You might not be able to do everything in one day, but little steps here and there, little actions here and there, it all builds up. And also to create a process that works for you. Because if you're trying to do everything at once, one thing I find is that then become an overwhelming situation. So now I said to myself, okay, today I'm doing this and I'm going to do it very well, But also, speaking, having been a freelancer and still working in that freelance space, one thing I have learned in the last decade, even with my health and everything, especially when I look back, now I'm learning to look back not with regret, but to say, okay, it was necessary for that to happen so that I will learn. Always ask for what you are worth and what you deserve. Don't be afraid that if you ask for more, they will say no, because at the end of the day, what's the worst that most people can say? No. And also, when you recognize toxic situations, um, learn to either address it or reposition it in a way that it doesn't continue to drain you. And with the health front, you know, I would always say do what the doctors tell you. Obviously, if you can't seek a second opinion, do. Or if you can find alternatives that help you to live and lead a better life, then do that. But in cases where, in my case, I have to physically and actively go into a hospital for my treatment, if you must if there is a treatment that you must absolutely have, don't do anything stupid like missing your dialysis days. That is dumb, absolutely dumb. Even if you're a Christian and you believe God is going to heal you, that is still dumb, because there's a reason we have the power of will and choice, and we're given wisdom and discernment, and so we have to choose wisely. We have to take wise actions and not do things that bring our faith into disrepute. So those are the little things I would say.
There are a lot. There are a lot, and I really do believe that those that are watching and listening, they're going to gain a lot from what you have said. Now, as we bring this wonderful interview to a close, I just want two questions for you to answer for me. The first one is, how can they get in contact with you?
So I'm on social media. My social media handle on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook is Belinda Otas. So if you put Belinda Otas into Google, that's what will come up. My website has been going through a rebrand for for a long time, so I don't even want to say go to my website because the idea I have for it keeps changing. And and now that I'm developing my podcast, I want to do that before I put the website back into the public domain. And so Belinda Otas, Twitter, Belinda Otas, Facebook. I have a Facebook page, so Belinda Otas will come up. Belinda Otas LinkedIn, and that's BelindaOtas.
Thank you. Finally, I would like you to leave the viewers and the listeners with, what is your favorite quote, or what is your favorite song, or perhaps a word of encouragement? Any of the three.
Oh, that's a good question. So right now, don't laugh. There's a country music song I really enjoy right now. Let me pull it up. It's the words for me, and I think it's applicable to every a lot of things about life. It's called I Hope You Dance by Leanne Womack, and the lyrics. The lyric goes something like this: I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. You get your fill to eat, but always keep that hunger. May you never take one single breath for granted. God forbid love ever leave you empty-handed. And so, and then there's a line that stays with me. It says, I hope that when the opportunity, the chance. Oh, and yes, he says, and when you get the choice to sit or dance, I hope you dance. And I think for me, that's kind of where I'm at in life right now, because I have the opportunity to either let renal disease win or stand up and fight back. So when I have the strength, I will always take the opportunity to dance.
I'm grateful for this time that we've spent. You truly are a miracle, and I love your resilience.
Thank you.
I hope to see you continue to dance. Thank you so much, Belinda.
Thank you for having me at the Dalmida. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.